Okay, we're back for surveys part two. A few things that we wanted to get out of that discussion, and hopefully you got some stuff that'll stick with you. But here's what I wanted you to write down. Open questions. That's things like, what kind of music do you like? Well, they can be difficult to interpret. They are difficult to interpret. Closed questions, like checklists and ranking and rating questions, are easier to interpret, but you might lose some of the meanings. So, for instance, when someone, rates, they have a bunch of boxes and they rate country something, that might mean old country or new country or certain types of bands where if and that's a closed question, that's just a check mark on country or just 5 next to country or whatever, where in open questions you might get some of the depth of answer that's so hard to interpret. So it's kind of like a back and forth. And here are the closed questions. I just wanted to remind you that this is things like checklists, rating and ranking. A couple more definitions, and this goes with surveying stuff. The target population is who or what we want to say something about. Why we're doing this survey? Well, we'd like to say something about these people or these objects or this process or whatever. Something about. The sample population, the sample is who we actually talk to, who we actually get surveys back from. People we actually survey. Note that if these two things don't match, we get what's called bias. The word is representative. Must be representative of the target. Otherwise, we get bias. Otherwise. The variable, or sometimes you hear random variable, is what we want to measure. So musical preference or whatever it might be. Example one. So we wrote our questions, our checklists and stuff like that. How are we going to actually conduct our survey? How many surveys is enough? Well, let's answer this question first. How many surveys is enough? Our book says 10% of the target. Now, that's not always possible, right? When we do our survey, we're not going to survey 10% of the school. Similarly, that if you think of having a target like Canada, I want to say something about everybody in Canada. Well, 10% of 30 million people is 3 million people. You're going to have 3 million people in your survey? I don't think so. How will you conduct the survey? That's these things down here, and I've split them into two types. These definitions are all in your textbook. So if you don't like the rest all version, you can go to the textbook. But I'm just going to go through them here. Random sampling technique are ones, random doesn't mean, when you have random thoughts or a random question, that doesn't mean what it means in math. Random means something very specific. It means that everyone is equally likely. That's what random means. Um, so here's some sampling techniques that are random. The simple random sample is the best one as far as math is concerned. And this is just everyone in the target has an equally likely chance of being selected. For instance, names, if you put everybody's name in a hat, that's simple random sample, okay? Or you get the computer to generate some numbers. So computer random number generator. So you number all the people in the school from 1 to 900, and the computer spits out a few random numbers, and then you go survey them. That's simple random sample. Another one, a systematic sample. Systematic sample is where we pick, say we pick every second person or every 10th person. That's systematic. Every 10th person, that's systematic. More? Yeah, there's more. A cluster sample. Let's do that one after, actually. Let's do that one after this one, because this one makes sense to do after. So the next one we'll talk about is a stratified sample. That is a big math word there. Stratified sample. Stratified sample, and this would have occurred to you guys probably if you had to survey the school, that you'd want a certain number of grade 9s and a certain number of grade 10s and a certain number of grade 11s and so on. And that's the idea of a stratified sample. You break up the population, break up target into groups. And these don't have to be the same size groups, and that's what the groups are called, strata. And then we pick a proportional amount. I'm just going to put a percent, pick a percent for the sample. So if we know that, for instance, 25% of the kids at Northwestern are in grade 9, that means 25% of our sample should be grade 9ers. The last one is cluster. And a cluster sample is very similar to a stratified sample, but instead of picking a percent for the sample from each strata, what we do is we pick a strata, we pick a group, and survey everybody from that group. We randomly pick a strata and then survey everyone. So we say, well, hang on, that doesn't make sense. Because if we wanted to survey like 50 people for our music survey, and I break it up into 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s, and year 5s, and survey everybody, that's way too many people. Well, we wouldn't break it up that way. Another way to break it up into strata might be by classroom, right? So home forms are the clusters, and we'll just go to one home form and survey everybody, right? You can probably think of problems with the cluster sample. Non-random samples, a census isn't random, and a census exactly what this is, you survey everybody, and it's very expensive to survey everyone. Even for us on our music survey, we'd have to photocopy, 900 pieces of paper. There's what's called a convenient sample. Convenient sample is like just go wander around the halls and find people who will fill out your survey or the cafeteria. Pick an easy sample. And this is what you would have probably thought before we had this discussion, is you pick random people. Oh, that person in the hallway, random people. No. Those are convenient people because they're close to you. There's what we call a volunteer response. A volunteer response is people just volunteer to fill out your survey. You ask for respondents, maybe on the announcements, or you know, ask people to phone in. That's a volunteer response. There's another one that our book used called the judgment sample. Basically, you do a convenience sample and you kind of judge whether you've got enough boys and enough girls, whether it's representative of all the groups that you have in your target. So, and that's not very good either. It's not very good because you end up with a non-random sample. Besides, if the sample is representative. So you do your convenience sample, but you got twice as many girls as boys. Well, then you go out and you survey a few more boys to make it even. That's a judgment sample, and it's not very good. All right, bottom line. Bottom line. So when you're assessing a survey, you ask yourself these 4 questions. Is the sample size large enough? And remember, we thought 10% of your target. Is the sample representative? And you read the question, you have to decide. Are the survey questions unbiased? And we had that discussion. Are they unbiased? Was the collection method appropriate? Well, for instance, did you hand a written survey to a bunch of 4-year-olds to fill out with a pen? Well, that's not appropriate collection method. And there's lots of situations where we have inappropriate collection methods. So here's the homework, and it's a little bit different. The homework is to choose one of these studies, and then you go through that study answering these 4 questions. And yes, you have to write this down. You've got to write this down and do a decent job of one study or the other. So this is with a partner, please. And again, because this is important stuff to discuss. Discussing is part of this material. Please and thank you. Good, that's it.